Welcome, everyone, to this briefing brought to you by the Israel Defense and Security Forum, IDSF. In Hebrew, our name is Abitchonistim. IDSF is the leading Israeli organization advocating for strong national security to defend Israel. We have a very important topic to discuss today on today's briefing, so thank you to all our viewers and supporters for tuning in. Many of you know that President Trump has indicated that he doesn't want to start wars, he wants to end wars. And he's further indicated that there is a belief that it is possible to have a diplomatic solution with the regime in Iran. However, many of our long-standing followers of these briefings know that we have been discussing the need for a very strong military response to the regime in Iran. And therefore, to discuss this issue, we have Or Yissachar, who is the head of the IDSF research department and very much an expert on all things related to the regime in Iran. So, Or, thank you so much for joining the briefing today.
Good to be with you, Moshe. Thank you.
Or, so why don't you just jump in? What is your initial thoughts when you hear coming out of the U.S. this idea, this interest of exploring diplomacy with Iran?
Look, so first of all, we have fresh winds of change in the White House, and we can see how President Trump is doing almost anything but foreign policy in his first week in office, and I've been following very closely. I'm sure you follow too. The only real thing Trump has done related to foreign policy was to sort of prudently or less prudently convince Colombia and Mexico and other countries and El Salvador to receive migrants that committed crimes in the U.S. to basically receive these outgoing flights from the U.S. And he's also spoke to the World Economic Forum in Davos. But really, all of these are directly related to the U.S. domestic policy. And if Henry Kissinger said once that Israel has no foreign policy, it only has domestic policy, come on, the United States, especially the Trump administration, the incoming administration, is anything but, outward looking. The basic requirement they have is safety at home, the safety of the American homeland. But any foreign policy, and Trump talks a lot of foreign policy, is a derivative of safety at home, safety of the American homeland. And in that sense, we're in the same boat. We're really singing out of the same song when it comes to Iran. What do I mean by that? There is this notion that the danger coming out of Iran is an Israeli issue, and we claim otherwise. We claim that the Iranian nuclear program that is clearly destined for military means is a global issue. It's an issue directly threatening the American homeland, directly threatening American bases in the Middle East, directly threatening Europe. And if Iran, God forbid, lays its hands on nuclear weapons, that is directly posing a threat on Israel, on American interests, on safety of Americans everywhere, and on the safety of navigation routes, and by extension, how many goods really end up ending in the U.S. homeland. All of these things are very much a global issue, and of course, that would give Iran an amazing exclusive ticket to this club of nuclear nations, alongside its partners, Russia, China, and North Korea. So if Iran gets nuclearized, Russia, China, and North Korea gain. If Iran does not get nuclearized, Russia, China, and North Korea lose. This is a direct American interest. And so we really are saying that time is running short. The clock is ticking. Clock is ticking, and we don't have much time. If 10 years ago, Obama could have taken the time with negotiations, endless negotiations with Iran, now we can see how negotiations with Iran risk fudging time until the regime lays its hands on the bomb. Now, needless to say, we don't need to be experts. We simply need to go online and check the United States Director of National Intelligence reports. We need to see the IAEA, International Agency of Atomic Energy Agency. All these watchdogs talk about very alarming Iranian rush to the bomb. Already incumbent National Security Advisor Mike Waltz talked about how they will not let Iran lay its hands on nuclear weapons, how much it's a global threat, how much the DNI, the Director of National Intelligence Report, indicate that Iran is inches away from clutching nuclear weapons. All these things are not a joke. are not a game. This is a matter of life and death for Israel, for the region, and for the United States. And if Iran tried to assassinate President Trump, who guarantees that Iran will not try to do something even worse? And so the point here is not to open a war, like Moshe said, but to end a war. If Iran is the main reason why we're in this mess in the first place, Iran launched its protege, its proxy Hamas, in Gaza to murder 1,200 Israelis and open the worst war the Middle East known for years, especially notably the worst war Israel has ever known. And so if it had not been for the regime in Iran, all of these wars would not exist. Hezbollah was armed to the teeth with Iranian armament. The Houthis in Yemen blocking the Red Sea and all the shipping lanes, the navigation routes, are funded and armed by Iran. All these ballistic missiles and all these things are not manufactured in Yemen, they're manufactured in Iran, and they're smuggled there. So Iran really sends all of these, waves of poison all around the Middle East and around the world. It's trying to sometimes successfully carry out terrorist attacks on European soil, try to assassinate Mike Pence and other diplomats, try to assassinate Trump in the US, the Saudi ambassador to Washington. So what I'm saying is that Iran must never have nuclear weapons. And it's not just an Israeli issue, it's a global issue. Now, what we're saying is that the time is running short. And unfortunately, we don't see any scenario, knowing the regime in Tehran as well as we do, that Iran gives up willingly on nuclear weapons. Make a beautiful deal with Iran. You can make a beautiful deal with the Democrats, maybe with China. It doesn't work like that with Iran. They will never give up their aspiration to clutch nuclear weapons. Obama was heavily criticized, rightfully so, for signing a deal, the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. Trump heavily criticized this one. That's basically looked the other way. Basically gave chotemet kashrut, right? Made Iran's nuclear program kosher, if you can say so. Gave it a stamp. Instead of destroying centrifuges, they simply deconstructed them and put them in a basement. And instead of destroying the uranium reservoirs, they simply put it away. And when they were required to report all nuclear activity, so far they lied. When they were required to fill the pipes of one of their reactors with cement, with concrete, they boasted for merely doing a Photoshop picture and sending it out to the superpowers. And when Israel gave real intelligence, like the nuclear archive, Netanyahu's famous press conference, the superpowers ignored both the Obama administration, the Biden administration, and the European allies, that basically the E3+1, as they're called. Basically, what they said is that we don't have enough evidence. The mechanism works that the UN watchdog, the IAEA, goes to Iran and inspects, and so far we haven't seen anything unusual. Well, yeah, because the deal doesn't give them too much power to inspect in the first place. So it's really dangerous to look the other way while Iran is nuclearizing, getting inches away from a nuclear bomb. I will just say this. In my opinion, there is no other way but a preemptive military action against the nuclear reactors in Iran. The United States has these capabilities. It does not take too much effort. And if you're willing, instead of really going back and forth with the Iranian regime with negotiations for 4 years, how about destroying all of the Iranian nuclear program in 4 hours? This is really not going to take much from President Trump to do. They have the wonderful, beautiful toys that he like to say about the mother of all bombs in Afghanistan. All these things are possible. And one last thing, I think destroying Iran's nuclear program will, number one, secure Israel's future, because we really are with a sword above our necks in front of an imminent nuclear holocaust. I'm not exaggerating. But number two, it will also bring Arab countries closer to Israel. All the beautiful deals we want to do with Saudi Arabia, with Oman, with all the Muslim world, it will not be possible with Iran getting its hands on nuclear weapons. We saw how Arab countries sent their ambassadors back to Tehran. MBS, the Saudi crown prince, welcomed the Iranian president in Riyadh for the first time in many, many years, trying to sort of give them a bear's hug, because they understand that nobody will come to save them. And they want to, as you know, just like in school culture, to side with the bully. They will not come to Israel nor to the United States without first finishing off Iran's nuclear program. So what we're saying is that no boots on the ground, no regime change, nothing whatsoever. Just like we destroyed Assad's chemical program with these 58 ballistic missiles. Just like we destroyed ISIS, that really posed a grave threat to the world and to the United States, we have to deny Iran these very dangerous capabilities. Iran showed how dangerous it is by launching hundreds of missiles toward Israel a few months ago. This is an uncontrollable regime. And the last thing the world needs is an Iranian regime equipped with nuclear weapons. This is a red alert danger soared above Israel's neck and above the United States' neck, danger to world peace and American homeland. And so this is really what we need to understand. And I think President Trump understands that.
Or I want to push back just to get better clarity. Is there an argument to be made that the problem with the JCPOA, the former deal made with Iran, is that the terms of the deal just weren't harsh enough, and that potentially the new administration is not against conceptually the idea of a deal, which was what you're suggesting, but rather the need for a better deal? What would your argument be against that? That no deal is a good deal with the regime in Iran? How would you express that to them?
Well, just like Netanyahu said the other time, that a no deal is better than a bad deal. And I think that if you look at the Iranian interest, they will not sign on anything that requires them eventually to give up on their nuclear program. They will sign, however, on something that manipulatively will give us the illusion as if they give up on their nuclear program. So just like the previous deal, they remained holding the gun on the table. They didn't destroy the nuclear program, just like Obama claimed, the shutting down the Iranian nuclear program without firing a single shot. Well, that wasn't really the case. We see how today they're closer than ever to the bomb because of these capabilities. And we all would like to avoid war. We all would like to avoid conflict. But this act will not open a new war. Two years ago, that would be craziness. 2 years ago, that would be lunacy to attack Iran, because we knew that from Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, all these will rain down missiles on Israel. There will be a new war in the Middle East. Right now, we're in war for over a year now, launched by Iran and its proxies. We're already finding ourselves in 15 months of war. And the only threat, really, that remains above Israel and the world is Iran's nuclear program. Hamas, Hezbollah, they're all pretty crushed. And so Iran has very, very few options to react right now. It does not have all this stockpile of missiles with Hamas and Hezbollah and all these militias. And you know what? I wish that many things in the world could have been fixed, like this with a snap of the finger. But we saw how sanctions didn't work. They said we'll impose sanctions. Doesn't work. Iran already has massive sanctions on it, on part of the US, found a way to circumvent them with Russia and China. All right, let's try to avoid reality by making them sign a deal that didn't work. UN Security Council resolution didn't work. They are world-class champions in cheating, in manipulating, and this is not a joke. They will get their hands on nuclear weapons, and the future of the world will be in risk. So this is what we're saying here.
Thank you. Okay, another question. And I want to thank all of our viewers who send in their questions in the chat, who send them in emails and WhatsApps. If you're listening to this briefing on Zoom, you kind of are participating in the conversation. For all of you watching on YouTube, we love having you. You can subscribe, you can share, and you can also consider joining the live Zooms for the front row seats, so to speak. Or let me ask you a question. There's obviously a major concern that the U.S. does not want to be drawn heavily into war in the Middle East. Is there a concern? Is there a concern that if the U.S. were to directly support or be involved in a direct attack on Iran, that is now drawing the U.S. into a war, which it currently isn't engaged in on the front levels, or potentially bring war to the front back in the U.S. with potential Iranian sympathizers engaging in terrorist attacks in New York City or elsewhere?
Well, I disagree. We're already in war, and the U.S. is already engaged in the war for 15 months now. The U.S. is the #1 supplier of arms to Israel for the past 15 months. So the U.S. is a direct party to the war, willingly or not. But that's where things are. Trump, a few days ago, released the 2-ton heavy bombs to Israel. You remember? And then when they asked him on the plane, why have you released these bombs? He said, well, because they bought him and they deserve them. And I don't think it will drag the United States into war. On the contrary, I think the United States will prevent war. Because if Iran, God forbid, lays its hands on nuclear weapons, then no city in the United States will be safe. No city will be safe. This is a lunatic theocratic regime. Like Trump said, it's a religious regime. It's something else in Russia and China. And they are the weakest link. It will be lunacy, of course, to attack Russia or China directly. But Iran, it's the number one destabilizing factor in the world right now, propping up war and death all over the Middle East, sending drones and missiles to Russia to fight in Ukraine. Wherever you see the Iranian fingerprint in war. So in order to close the tap already, Iran keeps, there's an Iranian tap that flows water of blood all over the world with deaths and casualties and missiles. Let's close the tap. Let's prevent Iran from continuing it to wreak havoc around the Middle East. And that's a quote by Trump himself, that Iran wreaks havoc around the Middle East. And, I heard the president say it will be nice to resolve the issue without military action. I know that some of you already asked that. Trump is a businessman. I mean, he will never tell you his next moves. He says it himself many times. I mean, it sounded to some people as if he was declaring war on Denmark if they don't agree to give him Greenland, or the Panama Canal, the case of Panama. He doesn't always mean it. He likes opening up options. He likes to leaving a lot of cards on the table. And when he says, maybe, maybe not, we'll see, sometimes it's spinned in headlines as if he said that. But if you listen, what he said was that they asked him, do you think we can destroy Iran's nuclear program without a preemptive military action? I said, yeah, well, that would be nice. He didn't say, absolutely, we don't need military action. Obama said it a few days before signing the nuclear deal. He said, nuclear option is off the table. It's unrealistic. So obviously, when it comes to negotiations like this, you won't get the best bargain ever.
Now, when you do kind of think of what an attack on Iranian nuclear sites would look like, I imagine many Americans are thinking about in Iraq, thinking about in Afghanistan. What exactly does a strike on Iran look like? You make it seem like, oh, it's a walk in the park, it's an easy thing, but can you kind of elaborate on that? If Netanyahu, the Prime Minister Netanyahu, is potentially meeting with the new administration, with President Trump in the coming week or so, if they were to strike a deal, what would that look like in terms of an offensive?
Well, I will say that it's not a joke and it's not a walk in the park, needless to say. Now, I heard that Tom Holman, you know him very well, the border czar, was asked by ABC News' Marta Radis, what can it cost billions to deport all criminal illegal aliens and all the other illegal aliens in the U.S. And he said, well, I'm not putting a price tag on the next person that will be murdered. The next Laken Riley, the next person will be the victim of the next criminal illegal alien. So I'm not putting a price tag on that. So what I'm saying is that it's not really a matter of just walking the park. It's more like a seriously, heavily considered matter, has to be discussed between governments, the Israeli and the United States. And eventually, I think we have the capacity. We have, one, the technical capacity on the part of the United States and Israel. Number two, we have the air defenses, like we saw very well in October and in April, when Iran attacked us very viciously with hundreds of missiles and drones. What happened? The United States intercepted missiles, Israel intercepted missiles, and Arab countries supplied the intelligence. We forget that. Under CENTCOM today, the United States Central Command, there are multiple Arab countries and Israel. That's a fresh, nice addition from the Abraham Accords. So now we coordinate and share intelligence with the Arab world. And we had intelligence in advance of these missiles coming over into Israel. So Israeli F-35 pilots intercepted them thanks to intelligence coming from Arab countries. This is amazing. So the region is united behind this idea and will give us all the back in the world. They want to have it. Imagine we want peace with Saudi Arabia. All the trade routes from India through the Arab Peninsula to Israel and onto Europe, all these pipelines and all these trade routes we're talking about. None of it will be possible so long as Iran is inches away from acquiring nuclear weapons. So again, we're not talking about full-scale 20-year invasion to Iraq and Afghanistan, nothing of the sort. We're talking about much, much closer to the 58 ballistic missiles on Assad to prevent him from keeping on, bombing his own people with chemical weapons. That's what we're talking about, to prevent the future war, to shut down this war once and for all. This is the number one sword left hanging above our necks. Not Hamas, not Hezbollah, Iran's nuclear program. This will shut down the war, will shut down the Iranian tap of continuing to flood the region with blood. This is ultimately the end result of this move.
Now, I believe it was you who shared with me, and I'm putting words in your mouth, I apologize, that as Iran has lost their proxies with the Houthis, with Hezbollah, with Hamas, it has really put them into this position where they need to focus on their nuclear program because they're losing everything else. I'm curious to know, with the current hostage deal right now with Hamas, and as we're seeing in Israel, the return of these hostages, I'm curious what you think this is doing for Iran. Are they, kind of viewing this as a victory, as we're seeing the victory signs coming out of the Gazan population? Are they seeing this as the war is now coming to an end closer, and they're pushed to speed up? Any thoughts on the implications here?
Yeah, I'll tell you how I see it because I don't know what's going on in their heads. But the way I see it is that Hamas really, in the past few days, proven itself, the producer of the best show in town. It's a circus. It's a circuit, really. It's the circus of releasing 4 Israeli hostages, and before that, 3 Israeli hostages, receiving, release kits and certificates, and everything is symbolism. With Hamas, it's taking a page right out of ISIS's playbook and the Nazi party's playbook. Everything is symbolic. Think about ISIS. In a very cynical way, they could have just, shot these poor victims. But they chose not to do it. They chose to humiliate them. And I don't have to tell you how they did it. And putting these orange jumpers on them. Why did they have to do it? It's enough to kill them, right? Very cynically and cruelly said. But they wanted the symbolism. And they wanted to strike and awe international public opinion. Same with the Nazi party. They could have just, taken over Germany very easily. But they had these parades of torches and lights. And they used propaganda with these posters, with this idyllic blonde German soldier. All of these things are not happening on coincidence. This is all calculated. Think about what Hamas is doing here. October 7, very cynically, we can say you could have just killed Israelis. Why do we have to take their phones, and log in their Facebook accounts and start the live stream while, you document their humiliation and their kidnapping? Why do you have to spray graffiti? You already killed the guy. Why do you have to spray graffiti? There's a Izzadin Qassam brigades passed here. Why do you have to have an HD drone footage of all the gliders and all the Hamas terrorists coming into Israel, and there's socks on their heads and their green ribbons? Because it's awe, shock and awe. It's scary. It's terrorizing. It's terror group. That's comes with the territory to terrorize. That's what they want, and I'm wondering whether they have the budget to print. Where's the printing shop in Gaza to print the backstage and the platform and the HR microphones and the HD cameras? I thought they're having a catastrophic genocide over there. So apparently that was all a show, and Hamas knew very well that the whole world is watching. Exactly, propaganda, as they're very well said. The whole world is watching. CNN, Fox, Sky News, they all showed the release of the hostages, and Hamas knew it and understood it. It was important for them not to just, print titles in Arabic for the Gazan people who were right in front of them, but in English. Zionism is a crime. Gaza will become your graveyard. All these things. So that's what they wanted the world to see. And I think Iran, viewing this, I don't know if they're happy, but the way I know them, they have patience. Sabr in Persian, Subr in Arabic, patience. Even if they have a small loss now, they will leverage it to a big propaganda, a big circus, a big win, at least a veneer of a victory, and they will wait to the next phase. They have patience, and we don't in democratic countries. We're thinking about the next midterms and next election, and they think 1,000 years ahead. We have to take it into account and really wipe out this evil in Gaza that's called Hamas.
Ori Yissachar, head of IDSF research, thank you so much for sharing all of this. Thank you to all of our viewers and supporters for tuning in, asking great questions, giving some direction to these briefings. Our next briefing will be tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. here in Israel. Until then, stay safe, stay strong. Take care, everyone.